Talon would never forget that moment, when he was banned from returning to Earth. The decree from the Galactic Council had been issued, and all his memories of that planet had been erased. He, a warrior from another planet, had the mission of monitoring the evolution of humanity. But what had happened for a civilization to decide to forget the existence of the beings it had once created? Centuries ago, when humans were still primitive creatures, mired in endless wars and violence spreading across Earth, a group of extraterrestrial beings had decided to intervene. They called themselves the Saviors, those who brought life and hope to a planet on the brink of extinction. Talon was one of the warriors sent down, a being from a distant civilization who saw the potential hidden within humanity. But their intervention did not go as planned. As the war between human nations grew more brutal, the Galactic Council decided that humans were not yet mature enough to exist in this universe. They erased the memories of the extraterrestrial warriors who had intervened in the evolution of humanity and banned them from returning to this planet. All memories of Earth were blurred, and the extraterrestrial beings returned to their duties, carrying with them a pain that could not be explained. Talon, one of these warriors, lived for more than 3 centuries without ever thinking about Earth. He continued his life, protecting the civilization he lived in, and completing the tasks assigned to him by the Council. But everything changed when he met Emma. Emma was a young woman, full of passion and curiosity. She had heard ancient stories about extraterrestrial beings, and she believed that humanity could overcome its mistakes. When Emma discovered Talon, a being with a past connected to Earth, she could not ignore him. She sought him out, determined to uncover the truth. "Where are you from?" Emma asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity that could not be hidden. Talon silently looked at her, a hint of confusion appearing on his face. He couldn't remember clearly, but the feeling of a past he had forgotten always haunted him. He knew he had to lie, but there was a strange urge, as if his story needed to be told. "Earth," Talon said, his voice low and hoarse. "It's a place that has been forgotten, and I am part of it." Emma looked at him, her heart filled with confusion. She didn't know why, but she felt a special connection between them. Even though she didn't understand his entire story, she sensed that Talon was carrying a deep pain, one he had never had the chance to release. Day by day, Emma gradually grew closer to Talon. She didn't give up, refusing to let his past remain buried in dark secrets. She found a way to get Talon back to Earth, the place he had been forbidden to go. And when an opportunity arose, she didn't hesitate to invite him to embark on a dangerous journey to rediscover the planet he had once left behind. Their journey was not easy. Facing opposing forces from the Galactic Council, those who were constantly monitoring and intervening in Talon's every move, they had to find ways to overcome difficult challenges. Meanwhile, Talon began to realize that perhaps he was the only one who could change Earth's destiny. The question was no longer whether humanity could change, but whether they could forgive their own mistakes, as well as those of the extraterrestrial beings like him. When they returned to Earth, a place that had changed over the centuries, Talon felt deep changes within him. Humans were no longer warriors, but they still hadn't fully escaped their past. He saw the remnants of a civilization that had once existed, signs of a lost connection. And amid these ruins, he realized that, despite the mistakes, humanity still had the ability to overcome everything, as long as they didn't forget their past. Emma looked at Talon and said, "Maybe we've forgotten each other, but I believe we can start over." Talon didn't answer immediately. He looked at the ruined buildings, the abandoned roads, and then he turned to Emma, the only one who hadn't given up. He could feel the resilience in her heart. No matter how the world had changed, he believed that one person could change everything. With Emma, Talon stepped out of the ruins of a city that had once been bustling, but was now only a graveyard of buildings and empty streets. The air seemed heavier than Talon had imagined, not because of the ruins, but because of the memory of a place he had once called home. He could feel the absence of something very important, something he had yet to recognize. "Where do we go now?" Emma asked, her bright eyes seemingly unbothered by the desolation surrounding them. "We need to go to a place where memories can come back to life," Talon replied, his voice contemplative. a place that can tell me why I was erased. Do you think you'll find it there? Earth's heart, where humanity began to love and build, Talon said. Maybe the ancient cities, places I once saw in the faintest memories. Emma nodded, seemingly unwavering in her trust in Talon's decision. She had always believed in her instincts, and there was something in Talon's eyes that made her unwilling to give up. They traveled through barren lands, crossing dense forests that had once been thriving cities. Now only traces of time remained. Each step they took carried with it a feeling of sorrow, as if they were walking into a world that the past would never return to. When they reached a barren land, with hills covered in wild grass, Talon stopped. He stood still, his eyes fixed ahead, as if something was calling to him. Emma looked in the direction he was gazing at, not understanding why, but feeling an unease in her heart. "Here," Talon said, his voice almost in disbelief. "I've been here before." Emma stood next to him without speaking. She knew that no matter where this story led, Talon had found a part of himself. "Have you ever been here before?" Emma asked. "A long time ago," Talon replied, his gaze locked on a large, standing rock. "This place is where it all began, but I can't remember exactly." Talon stepped forward, and Emma followed, feeling like something important was about to be revealed. As they approached the rock, Talon suddenly stopped, looking at a large indentation on the stone. "This is it," he whispered. "This is the sign. This is where I met them." Emma was taken aback. "Met who?" "The ones who created me, the ones who decided to forbid me from returning to Earth." Talon raised his hand and touched the indentation, and immediately a blinding light emanated from the base of the mark. Both of them stepped back as the light gradually transformed into a ghostly image. "This is," Talon murmured. "They sent me a message." The image slowly became clearer. It was of a council, being similar to Talon, looking at him with cold expressions, but their eyes filled with regret. One of them, apparently the leader, spoke. "Talon, you've completed your mission, but humanity cannot continue developing as we had predicted. They must find their own path." "But why?" Talon asked in the image, his voice full of surprise and anger. "I've done everything you asked. I helped them overcome war. I laid the foundations for them. Why did you erase everything?" "Humanity must learn to rise from their own mistakes," the leader replied. "We cannot continue controlling them like puppets." Talon stared at the image, a deep sadness rising in his chest. He realized that, no matter how hard he tried, humanity had to find its own way. But what had caused the council to decide to ban him from returning? Were they afraid he would change Earth's fate? Emma watched Talon, not speaking, but sensing the internal struggle he was going through. She gently took his hand, saying, "Talon, no matter what, you're still part of this place. You can't walk away without knowing who you really are." Talon turned to look at Emma, exhaustion filling his expression. He didn't know what he was searching for anymore. But one thing he knew for sure was that Emma had helped him find something he had lost, a reason to live. They continued their journey, facing more trials and dangers. But no matter what, Talon felt a shift within him. He no longer felt like an outsider, but a part of this world. And maybe only Emma could make him realize that, no matter how many challenges they had to face, the resilience of humanity would always guide them to find a way. The story continued as they faced new challenges. Talon gradually understood that not everything the council did was right. And above all, Emma helped him realize that changing the fate of a world was not a mission, but a responsibility. Talon and Emma continued their journey, through ruined cities, through dark forests where light seemed unable to reach. Each step was a challenge, each turn a question left unanswered. But wherever they went, Talon could no longer escape the feeling that he was a part of a greater plan, a plan he couldn't fully comprehend. One day, when they stopped in a small village near the border, they met a group of survivors. These people, though living in harsh conditions, still held on to their belief in life. They had overcome all the disasters of the world, the wars, and the ravages of time. They no longer trusted governments or large organizations. They only trusted each other. One of them, an elderly woman, approached Talon and Emma. She looked at Talon with a serious gaze, then said, "Where are you from? And why have you come to us?" Talon didn't answer immediately, but looked at her with a deep gaze. "We're searching for an answer." The woman nodded. "The answer is not always somewhere far away. Sometimes the answer lies within us." She looked at Talon as if she could see through all his thoughts. "Are you the ones chosen to change this world?" Talon remained silent for a moment, then answered, "Maybe, but I'm not sure I can do it." The woman smiled, her eyes filled with deep understanding. "Remember, change never comes from one person. It comes from all of us when we learn to accept and rise." So Talon and Emma's journey continued, but it seemed they had discovered an important truth. Change is not something one individual can bring about alone. It is a collective journey, a process in which each person must find their own way. Both Talon and Emma, though they still had much to face, now saw a new future, one where all the scattered pieces would come together to form a complete picture. After a torrential rainstorm, when the yellow lights from the surrounding houses reflected off the wet ground, Kang felt like his footsteps were leading him into another world. A world that was foggy, unfamiliar, and seemed to be holding a part of himself that he had never recognized. He passed through the old wooden door of the villa that he had known since childhood. But today, everything seemed different. The atmosphere in the house was shrouded in a thick fog, and there was a chilling sense of abandonment, impossible to explain. The living room, where his parents used to sit and drink tea every afternoon, now looked like a place left to rot. "Something has happened here," Kang muttered. The paintings on the walls had faded, the velvet chairs were covered with dust, and the curtains were no longer neatly arranged as they once were. He could feel a shift, something waiting for him. Kang walked up the stairs, his heart filled with anxiety. Each step echoed like the knocking of a future that couldn't be avoided. That feeling, a whisper in his mind, was unshakable. When he arrived at his father's study door, an apprehension made him hesitate. But in the end, he did it. The door swung open, and what he saw left him speechless. On his father's desk, papers were scattered everywhere, and there was a book Kang had never seen before. This book seemed out of place, and Kang felt it was the key to the mystery he needed to unravel. Kang opened the book, its delicate old pages emitting a musty smell. His eyes started skimming the strange words, symbols he had never seen before. Everything began to make sense, yet it also felt uncertain. Each page was a reflection of his family's past, of secrets buried for years. Under the faint glow of the desk lamp, Kang read a passage. "The journey of those seeking the truth is never easy. Each step they take will lead them to places where no one dares to tread. Every story has a price, and once begun, it cannot be undone." These words drove Kang into a powerful urge. He had always sensed that something was wrong with his family, a secret his father had never revealed, and now it seemed that everything was starting to unfold. Suddenly his phone rang, breaking his train of thought. Kang picked up the phone, and on the other end was a familiar voice. It was Lin, his old university friend, whom he hadn't seen in years. "Hey Kang, long time no see. Do you remember when we tried to uncover the secrets of our families?" Lin asked, her voice filled with concern. "I'm at my father's house," Kang replied. "Is something wrong, Lin?" "That's exactly why I'm calling. I just got some new information about your family. You might not believe it, but I think you need to know. The secrets you're searching for are not just family stories. They're related to something much bigger." "Something bigger?" Kang felt a jolt of electricity run through his body. "We need to meet. At the old cafe now. Can you come?" Kang didn't answer immediately. Everything was starting to feel jumbled in his mind. He wanted to know what Lin had to say, but he also knew that the next step would make him confront truths he might not want to face. "All right," Kang said finally, "I'll come." Kang hung up, staring at the book again. He felt as if he was very close to finding the answers, but at the same time, he felt as though he had lost a part of himself in this journey. Every question he sought to answer led him to a new turn, and the deeper he went, the more he felt himself being sucked into a vortex he couldn't escape. He arrived at the old cafe, the place he and Lin used to frequent on weekends back when they were in university. The familiar space now seemed different. The dim light reflected off the old wooden chairs, and soft jazz music filled the air. Though he had been here many times before, tonight felt entirely different. Lynn sat at a secluded corner, the small table covered in a light layer of dust. She looked up at Kong with deep eyes, as if there were so many things unsaid. As soon as he walked over, Lynn stood up and waved him over. "Hey," Lynn said, her voice calm but tinged with worry. Kong sat down across from Lynn, his eyes never leaving her. "What's going on, Lynn? You just said you had new information about my family. I need to know." Lynn looked at him, then lowered her voice. "It's not just your family, Kang. I'm involved in these secrets too." "Involved how?" Kang asked, his heart pounding with unease. He could see the change in Lynn's behavior. She was no longer the confident girl who could always offer wise advice. Everything now felt like a dangerous game that both of them were playing without realizing it. Lynn sighed, her eyes carrying a somber tone, as if she was facing memories she didn't want to revisit. "Kong, everything you've thought was normal. It really isn't. The decisions your family made, the events of the past, they all tie into something much bigger. And we're the ones holding the key." Kong remained silent, trying to digest what Lynn had said. He couldn't fully understand what she was talking about, but part of him felt that this was the truth. Waves of doubt washed over him. "So, my family and me, we're all part of something bigger?" Lynn nodded. "Yes, everything we thought we knew was just part of a bigger plan. A plan that's been in place for a long time. And in that plan, we are the ones holding the key." Kang felt dizzy. The words Lynn spoke, her voice filled with gravity, were overwhelming, but he couldn't stop. Something deep inside urged him to continue seeking the truth. "Why are you telling me this?" Kang asked, his voice strained. "You're my friend, I know that. But this is too big. I'm not sure I can handle it." Lynn looked at him, her gaze steady. "I don't want you to be deceived anymore. Your father is not the only one who has kept these secrets. I've realized this too, when I started digging into my own family." A soft breeze blew in from the open window, carrying fallen leaves across the street. Kong looked into Lynn's eyes, trying to find the truth within them, but everything was tangled. "What do we do now?" Kong asked, his voice quiet. "First, you need to go back to your family. There's an important document you need to find. It will lead you to the answers you seek." Lynn stood up, pulling a small card from her bag and handing it to Kong. "This is the address of a place you need to visit. You'll find everything you need there." Kang looked at the card in his hand, his heart racing. "Where is this place? Why do I have to go there?" Lynn didn't answer immediately, just smiled faintly. "Everything will become clear when you step inside. Don't worry, I'll be here for you." Kong held the card in his hand, feeling as if he was stepping into an entirely new world. Everything was spinning around him, and each step could change his life completely. Would he be able to face these secrets about his family? Would he have the strength to change it all? He stood up, leaving the cafe, the weight of uncertainty pressing on his shoulders. Despite Lynn's assurances, he felt as if everything was about to spiral out of control. The journey ahead would be perilous, and the answers he sought might be far more than he bargained for. He walked out into the night, feeling like a stranger in his own world, but determined to find out the truth. The next day, Kong and Lynn set off together. They arrived at a desolate area where no sign of human life remained. An old house, abandoned and hidden deep in the forest, stood in front of them. Behind it was a large iron door, covered with moss. They exchanged glances, both uncertain, but aware that this was where it all began. Lynn guided Kong through a small passage at the back of the house, where a staircase led down into the basement. As they descended, the air became cold and eerie. On the walls, faded ancient inscriptions were barely legible, slowly eroding with time. They reached a large room, and Lynn pointed toward a stone table where a wooden box sat, aged and worn. "This is the book you need. But before you open it, you must understand that doing so will change everything," Lynn said. Kong walked closer, his hands trembling as he opened the wooden box. Inside, there was an old leather-bound book, its cover intricately designed. The dim light from the oil lamps cast faint reflections on its yellowed pages. He hesitated, but his curiosity pushed him forward. As he flipped through the pages, strange symbols and drawings began to appear. When he reached an important passage, Kong suddenly froze. "We must find the last person in the family," a line read. "Only when that person arrives will everything come to an end." Lin looked at Kang with an enigmatic gaze. "You are the last one, Kang. You are not only the keeper of the secrets, but also the one who must reveal them." Lin's words struck Kang like a lightning bolt. He couldn't believe what she had said. He had always thought of himself as an ordinary person, nothing special. But now, he realized that fate had pushed him into a battle not for himself, but for his family and everything they had protected. Kang knew that despite the dangers, he couldn't stop. He couldn't let everything fade into obscurity. The book was no longer just an ancient artifact. It was the key that unlocked a past he had never known. Each step he took brought him closer to the truth, but also deeper into a vortex of mystery and danger. When Kang finally reached the last pages of the book, a new challenge awaited. A group of cloaked strangers appeared, intending to steal the book. They were not just after the book itself, but the power it held. Kang and Lin were cornered in the ancient room. A confrontation was inevitable. But in that most dangerous moment, Kang realized something important. To protect the family secrets, he had to destroy the book. With a decisive motion, Kang threw the book into the raging fire. The pages burned away, the memories and truths erased completely. But in that moment, Kang understood that he was no longer just the seeker of truth. He was the one who had chosen that some truths should be forgotten in order to protect the ones he loved. Kang and Lin left the ancient house, leaving behind what had once been a crucial part of their past. A new chapter in Kang's life had just begun, and no more secrets would stand in his way. The journey was far from over, but Kang knew that no matter the obstacles ahead, he had made his choice. The truth, like the book, would be left behind, and what mattered now was the future they would build. Kang and Lin walked away from the ancient house, their footsteps heavy in the silence that had settled over the land. The fire behind them crackled and roared, consuming the book, the secrets, and the past that had held them captive for so long. They left the place without looking back, knowing that the world beyond the house felt different now. The air seemed lighter, as though a burden had been lifted from Kang's shoulders. He had made his choice, and while the truth had been destroyed, he had also freed himself from the chains that had bound him. The journey had been long, and the answers they had sought had not been what they expected. But Kang knew that sometimes the path forward was Mo Lin walked beside him, her expression thoughtful. She, too, had changed. The burden of the secrets had weighed heavily on her, but now she seemed at peace. The journey they had shared had transformed them both. They had confronted the unknown, faced danger, and found their way through the darkness. And now they stood at the edge of a new world. "We've done it," Lin said softly, breaking the silence. "But what now?" Kang turned to her, a sense of finality in his eyes. "Now we live. We move forward. The past is gone, and we have a future to build." Lin nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Then let's start over, together." They walked away from the ruins, hand in hand, knowing that the road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time it felt like they were walking into the future, not bound by the past, but free to create their own destiny. And though the book had been destroyed, the lessons they had learned, the strength they had found in each other, would stay with them forever. It was not the secrets that defined them, but the choices they made and the lives they would lead. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that they were no longer prisoners of the past. As the sun began to set on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the world, Kang and Ling took their first steps into a new chapter, one they would write themselves. Kang and Lin continued their journey forward, with each step marking the beginning of a new chapter. The road ahead was open, and although uncertainty lay in the distance, they felt the weight of the past slowly fading. They had freed themselves from the secrets that had once defined their lives, and now they could see the world doubles. As they traveled, Kang couldn't help but reflect on the path that had brought them here. The mysteries, the dangers, the decisions they had faced, all of it had led to this moment. He had thought that finding the truth would give him the peace he had sought for so long. But in the end, it was not the truth that set him free. It was the freedom to choose his own path. Lynn, too, had changed. The girl who had once been bound by her own fears and uncertainties was now standing tall, her heart light and her spirit unburdened. Together, they had faced the darkness, confronted the unknown, and emerged stronger. "I think," Kang said after a long silence, his voice quiet but full of conviction, "we've finally found what we were looking for." Lynn glanced at him, a knowing smile forming on her face. "I think we have." And maybe the journey was just as important as the destination. The world around them was changing too. As they walked through villages and cities, they noticed the subtle signs of renewal, the way people were beginning to rebuild, to reconnect, and to heal from the wounds of the past. It was as though the destruction had paved the way for a new beginning, a chance for the world to start fresh. And in a way, Kang and Lin had become part of that renewal. They had given up the weight of the past to embrace the future, and in doing so, they had found their place in the world. Days turned into weeks, and their journey continued. The further they went, the more they realized that there was no end to the road. Every new horizon brought more questions, more possibilities, but they were no longer afraid. Together, they could face whatever came next, knowing that they had already overcome the greatest challenge, letting go of the past and embracing the unknown. And so, Kang and Lin walked into the future, side by side, their hearts full of hope, their minds clear, and their spirits free. The story they had once feared to unravel had been rewritten, and now they were the authors of their own fate. The past, though important, had lost its hold on them. They had broken the chains, and now the world was theirs to shape. Together, they would write a new story, one filled with possibility, growth, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As Kang and Lin continued their journey, the path ahead seemed less daunting, less mysterious. With each passing day, they grew more accustomed to the uncertainty, embracing the unknown rather than fearing it. There were no more secrets hanging over them, no more looming threats from the past. They had chosen to live in the present, to write their own story. They traveled through dense forests, across barren landscapes, and into small, welcoming villages. Each place they visited offered a new lesson, a new insight. People were rebuilding their lives, much like Kang and Lin, from the rubble of their pasts, hoping for a brighter future. Kang often found himself lost in thought, reflecting on how far he had come. He had once been a man bound by the weight of family expectations, seeking answers in old books and forgotten secrets. But now he realized he was free. The journey had taught him that true freedom did not come from knowledge alone. It came from the ability to choose who you wanted to be and what you wanted to do with your life. Lin, too, had changed. She had always been the type of person who looked for answers outside of herself. But now, she had found something far more valuable. She had found herself. She no longer felt lost in the shadow of others' expectations. She was no longer afraid of the unknown because, like Kang, she had learned to trust her instincts and to embrace the challenges that came with every new day. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape, Kang turned to Lin with a smile. "You know, I think we're finally where we need to be," he said, his voice filled with a calm sense of resolution. Lin smiled back, her eyes twinkling with the same sense of peace. "Yes, I think we've found our place in the world. It's not about what we were searching for, it's about what we've become along the way." The road they traveled on was no longer a path to an uncertain future. It had become a journey of self-discovery, a path that was uniquely their own. And as they moved forward, they were no longer just two individuals bound by a shared past. They were partners, each contributing to the story they were creating together. They knew there would still be challenges ahead, but they also knew that they had the strength to face them. With each step, they were building something new, something that was theirs and theirs alone. They were no longer running from the past or hiding from the future. They had found a way to live in the moment, to embrace the journey without worrying about where it would lead. As the seasons changed, so too did their journey. They encountered new people, made new friends, and found new purposes. The world was wide, full of opportunities for those brave enough to seek them out, and Kang and Lin were ready. They were no longer looking for answers. They had become the answer, the ones who would shape their own destiny and help others do the same. Their story was far from over. It was only just beginning. And as they walked together side by side, they knew one thing for certain: the future was bright, and they would face it with open hearts, free of fear and full of hope.